Welcome back to the Char and Baryon channel, everyone. Today we're going to be wrapping up our X56 review series by doing a teardown so we can check out the internals and see how it stacks up. We're going to be doing this regularly for all of our future reviews. So let's get started here. I'm going to start with the grip, move to the base, and then move on to the throttle. Of course, I know a lot of you are going to be interested in the throttle wiring, since I had a lot to say about the myths surrounding that, but hey, I could be wrong, so we'll find out today. I'll have a link in the annotations to jump straight to that one, but we'll start with the grip. Alright, so here's our view of the insides. Now, right off the bat, there's actually a couple things that stand out to me. Let's see if we can get that right back in there. So, first is the trigger. This trigger, it's the same way that it works on the X52. So, and it has this little metal flap here that actually pushes down on the real switch, and that's not really a good thing in my opinion. The X52 has been known to fail when when this metal piece bends. And other joysticks that I've looked into, they usually they have the trigger push the switch directly, so that's not really a design that I'm a fan of. So it's not that it's necessarily going to fail, it's that it's one more thing that could fail, and there's not really much of a reason to have it doing that. The other thing that kind of stands out, I don't know if you can see this, the hat switch construction is basically just 4 switches. And so as you push this, it just pushes down. And I've seen much better hat switch assemblies than this. And the reason I call that out is the X55 was known for having hat switches that died. I don't know if these will, but it's not something that gives me a lot of confidence. These other switches, like this one, this looks fine. The switches themselves, I should be specific here, the switches themselves, I mean, they don't look like they're super robust, but you can't really tell if they're good or not just by looking at them. They might last a while, they might not. It's really the way these are being actuated that I have a problem with. The twist mechanism is here. We can see the potentiometer. Looks like this sticks into there, and then when you twist around this base as it's screwed in, this stays in place, and then the rest of it rotates. This moves with it and rotates the potentiometer. So yeah, actually I'm going to open up the bottom here because I remember from my first review how much I hated this switch. And I have a feeling, based on the mushiness of it, that there's just a little coil spring in there that provides resistance. By the way, some of these screws are extremely tight, to the point that I would say they're almost like over torqued. sure that's all the screws, but it doesn't want to. Yeah, this bottom part, I don't know if it's just like it's supposed to be clipped in, but it's not really coming loose, which is unfortunate because so far it's been easy to disassemble. Yeah, there's the spring, just like I expected. Oh, that's not just like I expected. It's like, this is like 1,000 times worse than I expected. That's like nothing. That's a piece of garbage right there. Yeah, no wonder this feels so terrible. I don't know why this is stuck. I'm pretty sure I've got every screw. It must like snap, and then it's snapped in too tight, and I feel like I'm going to break it if I keep trying to pull this out. So I guess we'll have to figure that out later. There should be a switch in there, and then this will rotate and press down on the switch, but then this thing gives you like no resistance, so that would go like that. And then as you push down, it's just so mushy. So yeah, this is kind of a travesty, this one. This is not worthy of something they're charging $250 for. These other ones, I mean, they're not great, but I mean, I don't know for sure that they're going to cause problems. How did that go in there like that? Yeah. So there's the grip. I think the grip, other than this thing, it's not the worst thing in the world, but I mean, the switch quality, or the way that the switches are actuated, does look worse than I think a $250 joystick should have in them. And in fact, if you go back to my first review, I said I think this is a $200 joystick, not a $250 joystick. But these are really kind of the same quality that you'd see in the X52, which is like what, a $125 sets. Yeah, it's not living up to that level that it should at this price point. Hopefully we'll find better stuff in the rest of this. Okay, so let's move on to the base unit. All right, now we have our base unit. Let's start by removing the spring from the gimbal. See, it's a basic ball head gimbal. Not really the best gimbal for a joystick, but gets the job done. Saitek uses them on all of theirs. Lots and lots of screws for us to go through. This is going to take a while. There we go. And so you have a couple metal plates just for weight. Otherwise, this is a remarkably empty base unit. And I think it goes to show you guys, you need to kind of be careful who you listen to. Because I had people who were trying to act like experts in our comments saying, oh, this stuff, you can't even repair it because it's packed way too tightly inside. I mean, yeah, way too tightly, guys. This is a massive waste of space. It's the exact opposite problem. This really should be a much smaller base unit than it is. Let's take off the circuit board. And we can see the base of the gimbal unit with the magnet. So basically this is how we detect our X and Y axis. And it looks like we could take the entire gimbal out by taking these plates off here, removing that, but I don't know that that's going to really accomplish anything for us. There's really not much to say here. I mean, it's a very basic base unit. There's really nothing fancy here, but I mean, there's nothing to complain about either, other than the fact that it's just it's so big considering how little is inside of it. You know, you compare this to like the Warthog, which does a pretty good job of keeping everything compact. You know, it's a big empty box. It could have been done much more compactly, but technically there's nothing really wrong here. Okay everyone, here's the part that I know a lot of you were eager to see. So we're going to open up the throttle. Alright, so here we go. So obviously the part that I know everyone wants to look at is the wiring, which as we can see has absolutely no kinking. So that was the hypothesis behind the whole there must be a wiring problem idea, but nope, everything is nice and unkinked, although there is quite a bit of grease everywhere. It's really excessive. That was a complaint that I've heard about for the X55, was that a lot of the stiffness in the throttle comes from the excessive grease. But definitely you don't see any kinking being caused by a movement. Seems perfectly good. One thing I'd point out is that the throttle moves so much better without the tensioning system. Let's dump out all the screws. That's roughshod way. So you can see the gears that when we move the tension adjustment knob are rotated to raise and lower the tension system. So again, back to the wiring. So first of all, we'll go back to the original hypothesis. Does it require sheathing of any sort? You know, the original reviewer said wanted a wire loom for the wires to pass through. Clearly, that would not do anything. Would not change how this works at all. No problems. Is it bent at too sharp an angle? Again, no. We clearly see there's no kinking. You know, we do have wire harnesses, so you know, some people seem to think that wire harnesses would prevent this. Well, they're there, so if you think that, then there's no problem. Another hypothesis I heard was that the wires get bound up inside the throttle, and if you can see, they actually clamp in there, so clearly that's not an issue either. So there's clearly no issue with the wiring. I think it's worth hypothesizing over why there could be an issue with this. So if you were to put this together, could there be a defect? Could you do something wrong? And I don't know, maybe if I pull this, get a lot more wire out of that, maybe? Can I mess this up? It seems to not really develop any problems even if I pull it. But one thing I do notice, when I pull that, it does cross over into the middle here. And we do have these that basically seal. You can clearly see how they sit inside there. And one thing that's interesting about that is, the X55 used the exact same system, but this throttle design actually goes back farther than that. It goes back to the X65F. That's where this was created, and the X65F did not have this tension knob, which makes me wonder, did it have this? Because these things are probably there just to shield the wires from the tension system. And so I wonder, like, if I pull this out, get a little too much wire in there, and then I just roughly just shove this down on there. Oops, I have this the right way. No, I don't have it. There we go. Boom. So now it's, yeah. So yeah, it looks like I'm pushing down on it when I do that. And that makes me wonder if maybe what they do is there's just some sloppy guy at the factory who just is like, crushes it and doesn't really get all this cleanly out of the way. Which seems like a reasonable hypothesis, again, because if the X65 did not have it, I don't know if the X65 had that. I actually don't have one to look at, but it's reasonable that it may not have, since it didn't have the tension knob. That would explain why the X65 was actually well known for having an excellent throttle, even though it used an otherwise similar design. The X65 was considered to have a great throttle, and there were no real complaints about the throttle wiring failing in that. So other than that, let's see, we've got potentiometers, circuit boards for the buttons, potentiometers for the rotational axes, nothing really interesting. But yeah, the part I'm sure everyone cared about was that it looks to me like no, there is no wiring issue. You can clearly say that the design is sound, but I can't imagine ways in which some guy would just, it's the end of his 16-hour shift working for $1 a day. I wouldn't give a fuck either. Maybe just shoves it on and crushes the wires down here, just crushes them. And that would actually make sense, given if you've seen the photos of the wire failures in the X55, it almost looks like there's just a cut, like a clean cut across all the wires, and that would match what we're seeing here if you just kind of crush them there. All right, so now let's check out what's going on inside the throttle handle. Right. Alright, so there we go. Very simple. After all, there's just a two-way switch and then the mouse wheel over here. Let's get this other one off. Okay, I think I've got all the screws out. It's a little tight getting them off the knobs here. There we go. So you can see a bit more functionality in here. I remember I hated these buttons, and yeah, just look how mushy they are from the inside. And then the hat switches here. Man, the hat switch assemblies in this, they're just so cheap. These actually aren't even as bad as the ones in the joystick grip, but they look still not very impressive. So yeah, this, you know, the wiring may be fine. It is, unless you had a defect like we just checked out, right? But the switches are what I would really worry about. If you wanted to worry about something in this, it's just they look really light duty to me. I don't think they would last for a tremendously long time. But there we go, guys. Okay, everyone, I've reassembled everything off camera. Everything was pretty straightforward to reassemble. The only thing that's going to be an issue is, you know, this piece of crap, because I haven't been able to open that bottom. I'm going to work on that some more after the review is done. The only other thing was that the spring in the trigger is very hard to get back in. It doesn't really have a way to keep it in place until you put the other side back on. So conclusions. Well, what's good about this? It's pretty easy to disassemble for the most part, with that one exception of the bottom of the grip. Very nice and open and easy to work in. I think this would be very easily repairable on your own. We've debunked the throttle wiring myth. There's no issue with the throttle wiring, you know, assuming that you don't get something that was assembled incorrectly. One other thing I'd like to note is the throttle moves a little smoother now that we've opened this up and closed it again. And that may be that I've removed some of the excess grease just by moving my fingers around in there. With the X55, some people complained that the X55 had too much grease and it gunked up the works. And once you've removed some of it, it moves smoother. It's still not as smooth as I would like. I mean, it's still fairly heavy, but it's not as heavy. Negatives, though, of the switches. The switches are terrible. Especially, you know, this thing's just trash. I mean, someone should be put on trial at The Hague for this. The hat switches on the grip look poor. It just seemed like very low quality assemblies that almost looked to me like they were assembled in place, like as they were putting together the rest of the grip. It's kind of strange. The ones on the throttle didn't seem as bad. Oddly, it's just the grip ones. Trigger design, I think, is going to be more prone to failure than it needs to be. Yeah, it's just that the switches, they're X52 level. In general, I'd say the internally, it's like an X52. That's kind of the problem I have with the switches. I expect if you're paying double what an X52 costs, you should be getting at least a marginal improvement in the electronics and the switches. Other than that, it doesn't really change my conclusions for my first review. I think it's still not a $250 HOTAS. I think I said $200 in the original review, given the switch issues. I would say maybe even a little less than that. You know, I think they're marketing it at $250 because they know they can, because there's just not enough competition. Sadly, it's not really an economic justification in terms of parts and labor. I think it's just that's what the market will let them sell this for, or at least they think it is. All right, so that's that. We've got some new HOTAS products coming up for review. This is going to be the final X56 review, so we're done with this. And I'm pretty excited about the next one. It's going to be a classic. It's going to be pretty cool. And then we've got some CH stuff that's going to be coming up. So I'll be going through all of the CH suite of products as well. So thanks a lot, guys. Let me know what you think. If you enjoyed this teardown, you want to see more disassemblies, like and subscribe, and stay tuned for what's coming next.